Welcome to the Glassworking shop. Well, I got an interesting one today. I'm going to be assembling a rather complex assembly of pre-made Marini pieces. In the last series of videos, I showed every step, including the prep, and I've showed prep so many times that for this one, I think I'm just going to skip all that. So here's a still photograph of the various different components that are going to be assembled, and they're going to be assembled hot on the NQALHA using a hand torch and the auxiliary heat shield. I've made I made the puller punty with large moil and the assembly punty with large moil ahead of time, and I'm just about ready to start working. This is going to be a kind of a challenging one. I've got a rough idea of how I'm going to do it, but hey, you never know. Glasswork is weird. Unexpected things often arise. So I'm going to be kind of, trying my best to make it work. This will be done with the squeezer. There's a lot of squeezing involved in this design because it's kind of interesting to see how the glass flows when it's squozen. And in other designs, I try to make it as geometrically perfect as I can and try to get everything to line up. But in other designs, it's fun just to see the glass flow and just see how the glass is going to surprise me. So moving over here to the squeezer, I've got an interesting custom die set here with an inside V and a sharp point, and I'm going to use that to start off by pressing a divot into a round piece that I've made earlier. This round piece will end up forming the point of one of the triangles, and then little bit by little bit I'm going to add other pieces, each one with a divot that's been pressed into the glass and then a triangle point pressed into that divot. So I'm going to have three pieces with their points pushed into divots, which should give lots of opportunity for nice flow and squeezation. So here goes. Wish me luck. Gonna preheat my tongs. It's pretty cold here in January in Northern California with a major storm heading in, so pretty much everything is going to be really cold in the hot shop. So just getting the tongs a little bit hot so it doesn't shock my glass piece. And things are kind of tight in the kiln at the moment. So this first piece is a round component made out of some stacked white and black color rods. That produce a kind of a cool checkerboard pattern. Once again, I'm using my side tool rack, trying to keep the tools off the bench, try to keep as clean a bench as I can. Even though this guy has been in the kiln for a while, it's nice to kind of heat it up gently in the far flame. It was annealed properly after being assembled in the squeezer and then rolled out. This piece was originally assembled as a square assembly, and then pressed in, well, assembled as a square assembly, pressed into a square in the squeezer to drive out all the air and consolidate the piece, and then rounded by hand on the torch-top L-marver. So, piece is getting kind of limp. Over into the squeezer, and let's push a little divot. So, I don't know how well this shows up on the camera, but that looks like it's just about perfect. Pretty much exactly what I wanted it to be. So now, taking out my build punty with large moil. I like building these things on a 19 or 20 mil rod. I forget which one this is, 19 or 20. But I like building it on a pretty heavy rod to keep it under control. This is going to be a rather large assembly once it's all put together. And kind of important to keep the whole thing stable. So, kind of starting to get this guy up to working temperature, and I'm a tiny bit confused about what I'm going to do next. So like I said, I'm just making this up as I go, and I'm going to get out the auxiliary heat shield here. And I'm just trying to figure out what order I'm going to put these things together in. And I've got two competing ideas for how this might be done. A lot of the assembly is going to be done on the NQALHA with the Bunsen under the workpiece. I really like these. I think this is a Carlisle 130 Bunsen, and it works really well for this operation. So, I'm going to take that guy that I just squeezed, and it will be the first piece that will be assembled. Hand torch ready. I want to have more heat and softer glass on the assembly moil. I want to get that nice and soft. Being very careful to avoid snapping off these the various different punties that I'm using for this operation. Gotta be very careful. I've had problems before when I snapped one off and it caused the whole thing to kind of collapse. So now realizing that I probably have a slight sequence error here, but hopefully it won't be a big problem. I should have puntied up to this next piece ahead of time, but hey, that's part of the fun of the process, is trying to figure out, having never done this particular thing before, trying to figure out what's the most appropriate order of operations, the sequence of operations. The kiln dust off this guy. Slowly heating in the far flame. I think these pieces, the sub-assembly pieces, I think they're reasonably stable, and I don't have a lot to worry about as far as them exploding when they're heated, but hey, you know, doesn't hurt to be extra careful. So now, trying to get all the pieces to stick together. Bit of a misalignment here. Things are not going exactly as planned. But hey, it's glass. A little bit better alignment there. Of course, part of this process is just letting the glass flow, and so ultra precise alignment is not required. But the alignment appears to be pretty good. It's not perfect, but I think it's going to work. I want to make sure to keep the moil hot, make sure to pay attention to everything going on around me. This assembly is rather unstable at the moment, and hopefully the first trip to the squeezer will stabilize things a little bit more so that I can get ready for the next operation. And once again, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do next. But as I look at it, I think it'll become more apparent, and yes, that pretty much accomplished exactly what I wanted to accomplish. So, despite just a little bit of misalignment, I think I'm doing pretty good. Back where I think it's going to be happy. Get the next piece ready. I know that some extremely proficient glassworkers I've seen will do a cold seal on a punty like this and then ever so expertly snap it off at just the perfect time. And I'm a little nervous about that. I've had one of my assemblies that wasn't quite as stable as I'd like it to be, and I tried snapping off a punty with a slightly hotter than a cold seal, and the whole thing collapsed on the bench. So I'm just going to be careful. Take it easy. I don't know why the thing hisses like that. So, oh, that's fitting perfect. Oh, that's a nice fit. That is exactly what I wanted it to be. Instead of snapping, I grab it with the diamond shears, cool the point where it attaches, and it comes off very nicely without shocking it. This weld is very shaky at the moment, not at all stable. But the thing that I'm making appears to be forming up quite nicely at the moment, so no time to waste. Let's get on with the next piece. This one's gonna only have some kiln dust on it. Reheat them up in the far flame. Other than just overall glassworking demonstration, this procedure here is intended to demonstrate hot marine assembly on the NQALHA. The auxiliary heat shield prevents the hand torch flame from going into the sensitive parts of the machine. I still have to be somewhat aware of what I'm doing and somewhat careful, but the auxiliary heat shield definitely prevents machine damage, because even though the NQALHA is designed to be used in a hot shop environment, there are some parts that are probably a little bit more sensitive than I would like them to be. So I'm gonna just let the part hang out over the Bunsen. Check carefully on the squeezer, because squeezing dies get hot when they touch hot glass. So piece is still very unstable. Starting to get heavy. This is going to be a big one. It's going to be one of my bigger pieces when it's done. And like I said before, wish me luck. Little bit by little bit, I'm getting more and more confident doing larger scale work. Of course, some of my teachers do truly gigantic work, but for those who aren't completely familiar with large-scale marine making, it doesn't scale linearly. Big stuff is a lot harder than small stuff, by a lot. And the really big stuff is really hard. Gives me great respect for those who are able to successfully complete the very large projects. So that is a bit more stable. And of course, like all of my marine work, I'm using sensitive colors, and so I have to be really careful to avoid overheating the color. So now I'm standing on the squeezer to try to make sure that this guy is nice and stable before moving on to the next step. I think something that I may be working on in the near future will be a Bunsen holder, so I can move the Bunsen in and out of the work area a little bit better. Or maybe not. I don't know. This method is working. So here comes another triangle, which is going to be jammed into the opening. I'm going to be very careful taking this stuff out of the kiln. Glass is very slippery, and these glassworking tongs or tweezers do not grip securely. And it is so easy to lose a piece because it slips out of the tongs. And after all this work making this prep, you gotta kind of be careful. One of these assemblies is the result of many, many hours of work. So